everybody. I want to thank you again for joining us for another episode of the OneSpot Billing Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Melissa Allison, who I'm very excited to have with me. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background?
Sure. Well, again, like she mentioned, my name is Melissa Allison. I'm with AEG Vision, and my background is managed vision care in the optometry space. So I've been in managed vision care and revenue cycle since May of 1999, and I've never worked in the practice or a clinic. I've always been in the back office supporting practices focused on managed vision care and revenue cycle.
Fantastic. So, Melissa was one of these guests that was recommended to me because of her extensive background. And I was really excited. We had a chance to sit down a little bit together in Orlando a couple of weeks ago. And I'm excited about the topic that we brainstormed about. And I know one of the things that you said, a lot of practices maybe don't focus enough attention or maybe don't know their exact numbers on is the percent collections. So I'm curious your thoughts on that and maybe why that was one of the first things that came to
Yeah.
mind.
AR is obviously what we focus on, right? That's where we live. We live in our 30-day or 60-day or 90-day or 120 plus day. And are we collecting how much open AR do we have out there? But you can have a squeaky clean AR and not be collecting any actual money. So, it's an interesting and different perspective to look at it from a cash collections paradigm. So, you really want to make sure that you're actually collecting money and not just writing things off for a clean AR. So, it's an interesting way to look at it. And you can see, if you're tracking it over time, if you're tracking a trend from month to month, you can see where your baseline is. And then are you going up? Are you going down? And then if you see a certain payer that's going up or down in the collection percent, you can kind of figure out, oh, we may have a problem with that payer.
Is there any, and I'm still getting familiar with all of the industry benchmarks on things, but is there a certain benchmark that people should be looking at for what their collection should be, their percent collections?
Sure. So it depends on your practice and it depends on how you are tracking your net sales or tracking your cash. So if you are a cash based practice, meaning what your sales are for that day is whatever patients are paying you, and then whatever insurance money you're posting, you're probably cash based. So that means whatever cash went into the bank that day versus if you're an accrual based practice. So accrual based means your net sales for the day are what you collected from patients in cash and what you expect to get paid
Mm.
by the insurance plan. So if you're a cash based practice, really you have to look at what are your gross sales compared to what your net sales are. So your gross billed charges might be $100,000. And at the end of the year, your cash that you collected from your patients and your insurance might be, just for the number's sake and math's sake, keeping it easy, might be $45,000 or $50,000 or $60,000. So in that case, your collection rate is 45%, 50%, 60%. Whereas if you are an accrual based practice, what you really want to see is obviously we want to get as close to 100% as possible. But we live in reality and we know there's going to be those patients that we bill their medical insurance and they're never going to pay their deductible that they owe us. Or they might have a vision plan and the vision plans do audits and they come back and do retroactive terms and take your money back. And you think that's crazy. How can you do that to me? But it happens. And so we're not going to collect everything. So really, as you kind of grow and into the success of this, you want to see somewhere between 94, 95, 96, 97%. If we're really cranking on all cylinders, 98% is really, really good. But where we want to be is somewhere around 96, 97%. It's realistic.
That's outstanding. I would imagine keeping the rest of your aging in check helps with your percent collections because as things run away. Do you have specific benchmarks that you recommend for like your 60-day or your 90-day aging?
Sure. So, you want to keep 90% of your AR within 90 days. That's a good benchmark to
Yeah.
see, are we collecting? Because you certainly don't, the longer it goes out, the more difficult it is to collect. Some payers, they have a year, you have a year to file, they have a year to pay you, Medicare with a secondary, things like that. We know those trail a little bit more, but it's really good to understand the payer types, your payer groups, your carrier groups, and the types, and then, kind of look at how fast do they pay? How slow do they pay? Your traditional vision plans, your VSPs, your iMeds, they're going to pay you within 30 days. So as long as you're getting your claims out in a timely manner, your payments are coming back within a couple of weeks, to be honest. So you really don't want to see those vision plans extending out past the 30, the 60, the 90. And honestly, those are payers where their fee schedules are clear, and you could see a 99% collection rate on a vision plan. Your medical payers, and this is where you kind of have a blended number, because you need to understand your collection rate based on carrier groups or payer types. So your vision plans compared to your commercial medical payers, your Medicare type payers, your Medicaid payers, those are all going to look a little bit different. So your vision plans probably should be somewhere 98, 99%. If you're accrual based, if you're cash based, it's probably, like I said, going to be, depending on what your fee schedules are, somewhere between 50 and 60 or 45 and 55, depending on what your payer contracts look like and your fee schedules look like. But your medical payers, if you can get up in the low 90s, you're doing really good, because there's a lot of employer groups out there these days that have high deductible health plans. So we're billing for, procedures and testing and things that do get applied to deductibles. And if we're not collecting those up front, it's harder to get it from the patient on the back end. So your medical type payers, if you can get in the low to mid 90s, you're doing really, really well. If you've got your Medicaid up to 90%, you're doing well. Um, and somewhere between 90 and 95%, that's a good collection rate from what you expected from the insurance versus what you collected. So again, just keeping in mind that if you're looking at gross to net cash, you're not going to see 90s, you're going to see these 50s, 60s. But it's really important to look at it from that perspective and kind of over time figure out what is our collection rate on these payer types. So you're looking at actual cash collections, actual dollars in the bank, versus I just have a clean AR because my biller
Yeah.
just went and wrote off a bunch of claims.
I thought it was interesting. One of the first things you said was first find out what your numbers are so that you can see if it's going up, if we're getting
Right.
better, if it's going down, and if it's going down, where does the issue lie so that
Mhm.
you're aware of it. Today's episode is brought to you by OneSpot billing software. When a single doctor practice lost their part-time biller, AR quickly climbed past 25%. Taking billing into their own hands, the doctor turned to OneSpot and within months brought their AR down to just 5%. OneSpot gives practices the clarity and control they need to collect what they're owed. Visit onespotbilling.com/offer25 to book a demo and receive a $25 Amazon gift card.
Yep.
One of the things I know about you guys is you have an awesome, tech team that helps you with stuff, and I know your processes are just
Sure.
fantastic, but I can tell you, I speak to a lot of doctors that'll say, "Can you give me advice on what sort of reports I should be running so that I can see if there's write-offs happening that shouldn't be happening?" Is that something that you guys use your software for? Have you built, like, custom reports, or do you have advice for
Sure.
practices that maybe
So
don't
from a
have.
practice perspective that doesn't have all the resources that
Yeah.
we have, because you're right. The most spectacular IT team in the land. And of course, the most spectacular RCM team too. I have to give ourselves a little pat on the back. But from an independent practice perspective, or maybe a practice that has 3 or 4 locations, the reports that are in your software should do it. One of the biggest things that I've seen over time, just doing this for so long, is I've seen practices that are not reconciling to the bank. the doctor or
Yeah.
the owner doesn't feel comfortable giving their information to the person that's posting payments. Maybe they've mixed in some personal things in there, or they don't understand why it's necessary. And if the practice is just posting based off of remits, like I'm pulling down my VSP EOP, I'm pulling down my IMED remit, I'm pulling down my medical remits from whatever clearinghouse I'm using, and my biller's posting payments from remits. We don't know if that cash is actually in the bank.
Yeah.
Things happen. Checks get lost. EFTs stop working. All kinds of things happen. So I think what's really important to even start this process is you have to make sure you have a good reconciliation process, and you should not be posting those payments until you see them hit the bank account.
We get that a lot on the software that I have, OneSpot, when people import their data, they're aging it first. There's always, I won't say that because I'm sure we have some people that were already crushing it, but it almost always starts with, I have a lot, in my 120 days plus because we either didn't get stuff reconciled or I didn't get a chance. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, all of the reports that you're running are going to be off if there's, real money that's sitting
Right.
there. So we typically
Right.
say, let's, come up like really good write off reasons, like really, really track everything. Don't be afraid to log it the correct way because you need a good starting point.
Absolutely. And that's another thing that I see is just that we just don't post payments.
Yeah.
The bank accounts, there's enough money in the bank to pay the
Yes,
bills and pay myself
I've
and
heard that
pay
a number of
the
times.
practice and a little extra or whatever it is, to buy frames or equipment or what have you. And so it's really important to have a payment posting process and to get those payments posted and have that clean AR, because you could have dollars going all over the place, or money just falling through the cracks, and you just don't know because it's not something that you're tracking.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you've had a really unique experience because I know you were with AEG from the beginning as they grew. So you have like growing business knowledge, and then you spend time, looking at information coming in from practices that you're acquiring. So I just think you have a really unique angle. And is there, I talk to a lot of doctors that are looking to sell their practice or looking to retire and either sell to like a group like you guys or somebody else. Do you have maybe it is the percentage collective, but do you have, certain advice for them on maybe things to pay attention to first?
So develop a good, clean process now. So when a PE backed firm or an acquisition company is looking at and I'm talking specifically about revenue cycle and AR and things to do with insurance, but make sure you have a clean process so that whoever is looking at your numbers is looking at what's collectible. What of this, if
Sure.
the AR is being acquired, we need to know how much of that AR is actually going to end up converting itself to cash. So when there's not a good payment posting process in place, if there's not a good tracking system in place, that certainly can impact what those numbers look like. And you want to make sure that your practice is being valued at the
Right.
highest level. And when there are unknowns like that, certainly it has to affect those decisions that are being made. So it's really, really important to make sure there's a clean process. And if you get your workflow down, um, it's manageable. If you have a process for where your technicians are submitting claims on the vision side because it's a material order or what have you, and then you have someone scrubbing your medical claims and sending files every day. The very next day, when they come in, whoever's responsible for that, they should be looking at the bank account and looking at what's been deposited today, finding the remit that matches that deposit and posting it every single day. And if that is a daily workflow, a daily process, it becomes manageable. When you kind of chunk it out and you're like, oh, well, we get to payment posting once a month or we get
Yeah.
to whatever, then it can become overwhelming. And then if one month is particularly large, or one month you have a lot of PTO on the calendar or whatever, suddenly you get behind and it's really hard to catch up. So if you've got a daily workflow and you're working everything new that's coming in just for that day and keeping on top of what that looks like on a daily basis, then it can be a lot more manageable.
That's one of the when I get asked, like, "Well, do you have specific advice?" One of the first things I say is, "Make sure you're protecting your billing team with time to get
Yes.
stuff done." Because typically what I hear from billing specialists is, "I'm getting pulled here and I'm getting pulled there, and then I can't remember where I left off, or I don't have time to get to it for another 3 days." So, I
That is
think
very common. I think too, it's like, they end up being an expert in eligibility and things like
yeah,
that. And so if the front desk gets busy, they get pulled to assist with patients, checking patients in or checking eligibility or things like that. So it's really, really important to make sure they have a quiet spot
yeah,
to work where they're uninterrupted and they can't be, obviously if it's an emergency or something like that, then of course. But on a daily basis, on a daily workflow, it's really important to make sure that that biller and or payment poster, if you have those duties separated, has the time allotted to make sure they
yeah.
can work that on a daily basis.
Well, I know we really covered all the stuff that we were thinking with the metric side, but I'm curious because there may be some billing specialists, and that's who I spend most of my time talking to that are in practices that maybe the practices are considering acquisition or getting acquired. So I'm curious if you just have any advice for them. I know it's kind of a side topic, but that might be just a nice,
Sure, sure. Yeah. I guess keep an open mind for one
yeah,
thing, because it can be a good opportunity. And I would say too, when the time comes and questions are being asked, it's not personal. We're not questioning you. We're just
yeah,
asking questions so we can learn from you. And one thing I tell folks all the time is they are the expert in their practice. I'm looking to learn from you. I'm looking to get your opinions about who are your challenging payers. A lot of times we need their expertise because we might be going into a new state or
yeah,
whatever the case may be. And regional payers look different, Medicaid looks different, things like that. So definitely just keep an open mind. Certainly it can be a good opportunity. It's been a huge opportunity for a lot of people on our team. We filled our team up with folks that have come from private practice. I came from acquisition myself. So, it's been a great opportunity for me as well. And certainly, one thing I like to say is just make sure you have your workflow, make sure you have a process in place, standards of procedure, how you handle things. It was funny because I was thinking a minute ago about a lot of things that we hear a lot of times. People don't know what to do with negative remits. They're like, well,
yeah,
it's negative, so I'm not even going to post that. You need to post it. Post that negative number. I know it hurts and you don't want to, but it's true. It's going to be an accurate reflection of what really happened on that transaction, because that you've got your gross sale and then what you actually collected. And if payers are taking that negative number, post that negative number. So just mainly have an open mind. It's a good opportunity to kind of prove that you're a great asset, and there could be opportunities for those folks in the future. And it tends to be a real positive experience.
yeah, yeah. I've been fortunate enough to have been able to manage lots of people in different roles. And I always say, if you are good at what you do, you're always going to find like a spot
That's
somewhere,
right.
right?
That's
And then
right.
there are some people that I think really like working in the role that they're in, no growth opportunities. And then there's some people, when a company like you comes in, where if they would like an opportunity to do different things or to grow with the company, there's just going to
Mhm.
be opportunities that they wouldn't have had before.
Absolutely. Yes. And sometimes it doesn't always work out perfectly where there's a role within the RCM team or the billing team, but there might be a PCC role or there
Yeah,
might be a practice down the street that has an opportunity. And then, if they can hang out for a little bit and wait for that next job to come open on the RCM team or the managed care side of the house, because there's always credentialing, there's always practice support, provider enrollment, payment posting, research and reconciliation. I mean, there's, working AR, partial pays. There's all kinds of little like micro departments in
I
the
know.
revenue cycle side.
Yeah,
And you just never know what opportunity is going to pop up there.
it's fantastic. Well, I am going to thank you again for spending time. It's always a joy to talk to you, and I think you have
You're
some great
welcome.
insight for the practices. So, thanks for joining us.